welcome to another English-speaking short episode 9921. This time it's a huge honor for me to present you Francesca Albanesa. She's, from the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territories occupied since 1967. And thank you for sharing your experiences and having taken your time to speak with us about your recent time in Germany.
Hi, Anton, and thank you for having me. My last trip in Germany has not been exactly pain and surprise free, because as I came for three public engagements, one at the Munich Peace Conference, one at the Munich University, and the other in Berlin. And then I also had private meetings. Two events in Berlin, one with DM and one at the Berlin University. So I came to Berlin for speaking engagement, one at the Munich Peace Conference, which took place. The second at the Munich University was cancelled under huge pressure from pro-Israel lobby and local politicians. And it was eventually held in a safe venue, which was, of course, threatened and under pressure, but they were principled and they resisted. And then the most serious attacks were in Berlin. In Berlin, there was a cancellation from the Berlin University, the so-called Free University of Berlin, they invited me, and then they were under pressure and they held on pretty well until the mayor and other politicians threatened to cut funds. So while I do understand the self-interest of the university, I really think that sacrificing freedom of expression and academic freedom is such a fatal coup for the academia. So they will have to see for themselves what they have done. The last event, the one with the DM, was forced to move from one venue to another under threat and intimidation by the police. This is the thing that shocked me the most: the attitude of the federal and the local police, who have been threatening a UN special rapporteur with arrest. For what? For speaking of genocide, for saying that Israel is an apartheid state that practices apartheid from the river to the sea, as the Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem and Amnesty International have written. And so it's been brutal, and a brutal awakening into what Germany is going through.
So you basically wanted to inform, according to your mandate, the German public about Israel's human rights violations and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. So why do you think mainstream media and lots of politicians in Germany have such an interest to delegitimize you and to silence you, basically, through the smear campaigns and all this pressure they are lancing against you?
Yeah, I don't think it's about me personally. So I think it's very much about my mandate and what it does, and probably, the phase I found myself into. Because it's not that my predecessors have not faced defamation and attacks as anti-Semite, or at some point there was Professor Richard Falk, who could not be accused of anti-Semitism because he's a Jewish person, and so they accused him to be a self-hating Jew. So this mandate has always played a critical role and attract criticism, because let me spend a word about what is my role of special rapporteur. This mandate was created 33 years ago to investigate, document, and report to the United Nations on the violations committed by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory. Why Israel? Why Israel only? Because when the mandate was created, the Palestinian Authority was not there, and still the occupation or Hamas was not there. There were no de jure or de facto other authorities that Israel as the occupying power, which by then had been already over 30 years in 30 years in control of the occupied Palestinian territory, which under international law constitutes the unity, the territorial unity, where the Palestinians, because of the historical compromise they have agreed upon with Israel, the Palestinians will exercise their exclusive right of self-determination in the form of statehood. The Palestinian Liberation Organization has agreed, Hamas has agreed, but this is where the contentious arises, because Israel continues to claim sovereignty and tries to annex the land that remains for the exercise of independent state, of self-determination in the form of independent statehood. So, however, despite what my mandate says, I also investigate violations committed by others. I also condemn, when it's appropriate, the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. But of course, the primary focus of my work is the conduct of Israel, because Israel is the ruler. Israel is the occupying power. And so it's Israel which ignites all the rest and determines the life and death of people on the ground. So, in the face of this, my role is to analyze objectively what happens on the ground. And once the assessment is done, and once the international law has been applied, I need to just read the conclusions and advocate for remedies if violations have occurred. It's not up to me to be equidistant from the parties, whatever they are, also because here the relationship is not by two parties, or it's Russia versus Ukraine. Here we have Israel, which is the occupying power, and the Palestinians, which are the occupied people. And certainly they resist, because resistance is part of the rights of a people against the oppressor. There is nothing contentious about that. The right of resistance, including armed resistance, is part of international law. And of course, it has limits. It cannot target civilians, it cannot kill civilians. But this is why there is something called accountability, which I've invoked against all people from Hamas or other groups who have committed violence against Israeli civilians. So this is out of question. You see, it's so simple and linear. And this is precisely why there are people who do not want voices like me to be heard. Not because what I say is controversial, but because what I say, it's so linear, so simple, and so unequivocal that it might create awareness and conscientize and create a sort of movement for accountability vis-à-vis Israel and vis-à-vis the German government, who has completely embraced what Israel has done, not just over the years, eventually, but in the past 16 months, sustaining it politically and economically, militarily, in an unprecedented way. Well, this is something that German authorities should be held accountable for.
Yeah, I mean, most recently, the likely future Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced that he would invite Benjamin Netanyahu to Germany. So what do you think? Why is Germany in such an, let's say, crazy way still supporting Israel? Why is it so important for the German state to support Israel? Doesn't matter, leaving aside all the crimes against humanity they're committing.
Look, I cannot tell you why. Probably you as a German person should tell me why. But as an observer, and as an Italian observer, I have something to say, because I feel guilty too, very guilty for what we have done to the Jewish people. It's something that, as I was growing up, I couldn't cope with. It seems so atrocious. I remember I went to Turin, I went to Milan with my family when I was much younger. And I say, these are the cities from which, because in my area there were not many Jewish people, but in the north there were entire communities which were decimated by Nazi fascism. And so of course I feel guilty, and I should feel guilty. And because I feel guilty, I say never again. Germany has, look, I heard something said by professors Michael Barenboim and Eyal Weissman during one of the events we had, and it was very interesting. They were commenting on the fact that they are more experienced than me because they've lived in Germany. It's like if Germany didn't have its own identity after the Nazi fascists, after the Third Reich, re-emerging into the international community for Germany was about distancing themselves from the past. And yes, there was the Nazification, but what about the people? What about the people who had seen it, who had not said anything, who had let their Jewish fellows, neighbors, colleagues being taken from their homes, put in ghettos, completely dehumanized? What happened to these people? Because a genocide is rarely committed by a few individuals. It's a collective endeavor. And so it seems that in order to come to terms with this, there has been an embrace of Israel, a will to recognize the safety of Israel as a priority for Germany, as if Israel represented the entire Jewish community, which Israel wants to do, tries to do, but it can't. And I don't think there have been as many Jewish people speaking against Israel as there are today. And look, but imagine, I mean, they criticizing the Vatican for some policies of the church wouldn't be anti-Christian. It would have to do with the state. And so here, the criticism of the state of Israel has nothing to do with the Jewish people. And this is where Israel intentionally blurs the lines, and Germany follows. Germany repeats what Israel says. So criticizing the state of Israel is considered anti-Semitic. Saying that the Holocaust was was the genocide that was committed in Europe for the first time. And then there has been the genocide of the Bosnians, which is also, it's still Europe. And then there were other genocides before this, including one that the Germans committed in Namibia against the Nama and Herero. And there is also the genocide of the Roma and Sinti, who were killed during the same period while the Jews were exterminated and genocided. So I think that it's time for the Germans to reflect on what has been the reason that has pushed them to commit 2 genocides in 30 years. Because it's racism. It's racism. And I speak as someone who sees that disease, that social disease in my own society. The disregard toward the other because of religion, because of color of the skin, because of gender, it's something that it's extremely widespread in our societies and needs to be healed. So this is why I think that what has happened, let's say the Albanese debacle in Germany, should be an opportunity to reflect upon why Germany is standing, providing weapons and providing political cover to a state which has killed 60,000 people in 15 months, plus almost 1,000 people. This is in Gaza, 1,000 people in the West Bank. It has totally destroyed Gaza. Totally. What is Germany missing exactly? I don't know.
So what does this attack on your mandate mean for both civil liberties in Germany and the basis of international law? So international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention, which is always like the big international instance where most countries should refer to and should implement.
Yeah. I would leave the reflection on what it means for Germany to the Germans, especially to the human rights organizations who have been pretty silent while the police was beating up many of those standing in solidarity with the Palestinian.
For 1 year, many of them didn't say anything, like of the German human rights organization, like Amnesty never translated the human rights violation report into German, for example. about Israel. And just like
But you
recently,
have
they
so many
started to
organizations. I mean,
translate
again,
something.
I don't want to speak to anyone in particular. Also, because Amnesty, frankly, again, look at what Amnesty is doing today. We will have time to think of the mistakes of the past. But while Amnesty today has come out strongly denouncing the genocide,
Yeah, it's
and
very important.
it's very important. Where are the others? Where are the others? And where are the others? While there are people, including children, who have been apprehended by the police for carrying the Palestinian flag. But do we see how dangerous it is? Do we see how dangerous it is to have the police in full gear monitoring a UN special rapporteur or others for speaking at a conference and intervening? The police intervened to tell us, to remind us that some of the words where we were using were making them uncomfortable. Do I care? Why would I care if I'm speaking about international law? So you see, you start having crime of conscience, like freedom of expression it's curtailed by the police. What about the constitutional rights that protect freedom of expression and freedom of assembly in Germany? So this is the thing. The problem is not mine, is German, and with the Germans and of the Germans. But I want to say something that concerns my mandate, and it's the respect for international law. International law it's either universal or it's not effective. And we are really seeing the bare fruit of selective application of international law and the pick and choose attitude of member states. Okay, these norms apply to this, but not to these others. So yes, what Myanmar is doing is genocide against the Rohingya, but because look at the way they are treating children. But then 18,000 Palestinian children killed by bombs and sniper fire, often shot in their head and torso. This is not a sign of genocide. Calling a population, an entire population, responsible, not innocent, human animals, and to be starved and to be punished with lack of water, lack of fuel, medicines, and food, this is acceptable. So you see, it's again, the beauty of the law is that it should apply objectively, regardless of the person. If I commit a crime, I need to face, or if I commit an offense or a state wrongdoing, there should be accountability regardless of who the state is or who the person is. The moment we start to pick and choose and make exceptions, we have already created a vulnus, an incredible vulnerability in the body of the law, which will not be able to protect anyone if it continues to be disfigured as it has.
So how did your job as UN Special Rapporteur change after the attacks on 7th of October?
It changed a lot. So the torment on October 7, after seeing the scenes of the violence against Israeli civilians, it was very traumatizing. It was brutal. And at the same time, I said, because I had seen many massacres happening to the Palestinians that are probably not known of, forgot. I don't know what's the problem, but there have been so many massacres in my lifetime without considering those before, that I say probably this is the opportunity for the international community to realize that they need to embrace the Palestinians and the Israelis in wisdom and compassion and really help these people see each other in their humanity in this moment of acute suffering and pain. So since then, I had these two words in my mind: compassion and wisdom, compassion and wisdom. And I've always thought that I would deliver. So I've continued to deliver my mandate in the most inclusive and possible way, but always upholding international law. So for example, it has been about cutting through the wall of denialism people's defending Israel's war on Gaza, self-defense, and they say, no, Israel cannot invoke self-defense. Israel needs to restore law and order and ensure accountability, but through other means. It cannot wage a war against the population it keeps under perpetual occupation and oppression and apartheid. I've been warning of the risk of genocide, the serious risk of genocide, and then documenting that a genocide was unfolding. I've worked with other 60 special rapporteurs. We have never, not 60, 30. We have never worked so closely together, coordinating, exchanging information, trying to understand the critical legal underpinning of the situation as it was violently evolving. I've been invited to give conferences or to meet with government officials and others in so many countries. I've given hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews and lectures. And so my life has become more busier than ever, and but also more painful, because it has been very painful to document a genocide, both through what was coming out of Gaza, the testimonies of the survivors or the first responders. And it was also very heavy to see the evidence that the soldiers themselves were producing, which was self-incriminatory. And I couldn't make sense of how these young people could reach that bestiality. And this is not to say that what Israelis had suffered on October 7 was not monstrous. Of course, there were attacks on hundreds on Israeli civilians, and there were attacks on hundreds of non-civilians, of soldiers. The first is a crime, the second is not. And still, because I've seen this happening over and over and over in Gaza, in 2008, in 2012, in 2014, in 2018, in 2021, 22, 23, just in the last 17 years. The massacres of people in Gaza, the eradication of entire families. And so this has been, again, Palestinians have been massacred without anyone seeing. And this is why when people ask me, so what do you have to say about the Bibas children? I've cried for the Bibas children as I cry for any child, and as I cry for the Palestinian children. I mean, no. So, when I'm asked, what do you feel about the Israeli children who have been killed? There have been 36 Israeli children who have been killed. And I feel deep sorrow for each and every of them, as I feel deep sorrow for the 18,000 Palestinian children who have been killed. So innocent were the Israelis, innocent were the Palestinians. The thing that really frightens me is the selective morality and ethics of people who can cry for the Israelis and not cry for the Palestinians. What's wrong with you guys? And so, yeah, my work has become, of course, more intense vis-a-vis member states. There are member states who have clearly lended their hands and say, let's work together for justice, for accountability, for end of complicity. Other states have become very aggressive, and I'm sorry, Germany is one of them.
Yes. So Israel's military has especially been criticized for its violations against the Geneva Convention, and this convention shall civilize the most uncivilized thing, which is war. You said it by yourself that the selective application of this international law is a huge danger. You warned of the tendency to just reduce international laws, that countries just use it when it's convenient for them. So why is it so tough to obligate Israel to those rules of international law?
Because Israel operates as a state of exceptions and is not the only one. I think that while Western states have been more or less compliant and decided to abide by international law, Israel and the US have not. So the last 16 months have exposed the brutal reality. And the point is that this is leading to the dismantlement of the multilateral order that has been in place since the Second World War. premised upon the UN Charter, Human Rights Treaty, the Geneva Conventions, to reduce the monstrosity of wars, the calamity of wars, to protect the most defenseless in wars, which are civilians. And instead, what Israel has done in the past 16 months is normalize a world without civilians, because everything has become destroyable. Everyone has become killable. And the script that Israel has used in Gaza has been used in Lebanon right now, I mean, very recently. And this scares me, because it's true, the system has not served everyone equally. For example, those in the global south have been the least benefited from it. But we in the West will miss very much the human rights system when it's no longer there. So this is why I think we should really act promptly, strategically, guided by principles in defending what we have.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Francesca Albanese, for your time. I wish you all the best, and
thank you.
Please continue to fight for your mandate, and give the best you can.
Thank you so much. All the best. Bye.
Leute, wir brauchen eure Hilfe. Wenn euch dieses Video gefallen hat, klickt auf Like, abonniert den Kanal und vergesst nicht das Glöckchen zu drücken, damit ihr benachrichtigt werdet, wenn wir neuen Content droppen.
Außerdem solltet ihr uns überall folgen, wo wir verfügbar sind. Das ist Facebook, Instagram, Twitter und Twitch. Und wenn wir irgendwelche Ankündigungen machen oder Posts, dann shared, was das Zeug hält. Gebt uns all eure Liebe.
Wir haben mittlerweile ziemlich signifikante Kosten. Wenn ihr es euch irgendwie leisten könnt, unterstützt uns doch auf Patreon. Dann kommt ihr auch in den Genuss verschiedener Vorteile, wie zum Beispiel Zugang zu unserer Discord-Community oder Zugang zu den ultrageheimen Patreon-Episoden, die wir dort posten. Außerdem könnt ihr uns natürlich auch über PayPal Spenden zukommen lassen.
Außerdem haben wir mittlerweile einen eigenen Online-Shop. Das heißt, wenn ihr euch immer noch fragt, was ihr euren Lieben zu Weihnachten, Ostern oder sonst wie schenken könnt, geht dorthin und kauft duftes Merch.
Alle Links dazu hier in der Beschreibung oder auch auf unserer Webseite 99zu1.de.
Vielen Dank fürs Dabeisein, danke für die Unterstützung und wir sehen uns in diesem TV.